one day somebody does something unspeakable to someone else, to someone you hardly knew, and you do something about it, because you can.
This story comes to us from AZ Family, the Arizona News. The Department of Justice held a virtual town hall last Thursday about the next steps in its investigation into the Phoenix Police Department. Now, this comes nearly 3 months after the DOJ released a report finding evidence of excessive force, civil rights violations, and mistreatment of the homeless by the Phoenix Police Department. The Department of Justice said the next step in this investigation is the city entering into a consent decree agreement, or federal officials could file a lawsuit and then oversight will be court ordered. It needs to be. It needs to be right now. The Department of Justice also laid out what a consent decree would look like. It is a formal order that would generally implement an independent federal monitor to work alongside both the Department of Justice and the Phoenix Police Department, and then report back changes within the department to a federal court. Quote, when we find violations that are this severe and this pervasive, a police department needs the structure and oversight of a federal court to ensure that any change that happens is durable and lasting. It's not enough to say, stop violating the Constitution, said Maureen Johnston, who works in the Civil Rights Division within the Department of Justice. However, earlier this summer, our investigative team found incorrect statements and inaccurate characterizations of findings that the Department of Justice included in its report of the Phoenix Police Department. For example, the Department of Justice claimed that after a 2017 Donald Trump rally in downtown Phoenix, officers unloaded tear gas on peaceful protesters. But according to a video that our reporters on the scene obtained, protesters were throwing water bottles and tear gas canisters at the police.
Great to some breaking news right now, where police have now declared the protests happening outside the Trump rally an unlawful assembly. Team 12's Michael Downa is there. Michael, what's happening?
Yeah, Tram, it's really started to escalate over the last 30 minutes or so. As you can see, there's a clear no man's land right now as some of the protesters are slowly starting to back away. But if you look to our left, you can see a line of police in riot gear. Now, this really does feel and seem a little bit like the protests that we saw early on in the process right after the death of George Floyd, and things have definitely escalated since then. Now, we end up running out of the car. We were editing stuff for the 5 and 6 o'clock news, and we end up hearing loud bangs, which we believe to be flashbangs. And since then, well, we see basically protesters that have been yelling at each other, while police have declared this an unlawful assembly. Now, we're told that the president could be departing, and this is exactly where he ended up first coming into Dream City Church. We're wondering if he's probably making a little bit of a route so the president can actually leave the church. But for right now, things are a little bit more intense than they have been, because overall, this has been a peaceful protest for the last hour and a half or so. But right now, well, things have definitely escalated, and they are asking the protesters to leave the area.
This is just one example of why police advocates like the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association president, Daryl Kripling, are hesitant to agree with the federal monitor. Quote, I think the folks working at the Department of Justice have a lack of understanding of what constitutional and unconstitutional policing looks like, said Kripling. The Department of Justice left out all of the pertinent information and facts to come to their conclusions. And if they had included it, it would not have painted the police department in the light that it did. Now, the DOJ says it has not yet heard from the city on how it will decide to move forward. It did clarify that city officials have decided to meet with them for a discussion, but have not said when that discussion will be. Now, the DOJ also claimed that at the beginning of the year, the city asked them to not publicly release its findings report. They're going to do it. Since the Department of Justice launched its investigation in 2021, the city says it has spent more than $10.6 million on costs associated with the investigation. Earlier last week, Phoenix City Manager Jeff Barton issued a statement saying, in part, we look forward to collaborative conversations with the DOJ to identify a plan that works for Phoenix. And so, here you've got the Department of Justice. For 3 years they've been investigating them. What changes have they made? Then you got this Kriplian guy. Well, the DOJ said that they were doing this and this to these protesters, but what they left out was the video footage of protesters throwing water bottles and gas canisters back at the police. Okay, fair enough. But what about the other stories that I've done and the videos we've seen of Phoenix police officers assaulting people, stepping over the line with their badge, violating civil rights? What about those cops? And it's funny that, it's always going to be like that. People are going to leave out things to progress their agenda. They're always going to do that. Like, I'll do an editorial on a bad cop, and people will go, "Oh, you think all cops are bad?" And they'll start pointing out these cops that are doing good things in the city. Okay, great. You still have a bad cop over here doing bad stuff. That's what I'm saying. Okay, you had protesters that were throwing water bottles and stuff at the police, and the police had to respond. Okay, let's just go with that for a second. You're painting the Phoenix Police Department in a bad light. Okay, but that doesn't negate the fact that you still got cops in that department who are violating people's civil rights. Hello?